Hi, welcome back everybody with your daily video briefing on the tropics. Now we've been tracking Fiona all week. Fiona moved into Atlantic Canada overnight and is now a post-tropical cyclone. So with that, we're going to shift the entirety of our focus to newly formed tropical storm Ian here in the Caribbean Sea. If we take a zoomed in look at this, you can see that a much better organized system than we had yesterday at this time, hence the name. We've named the storm. And you can see a well-defined area of showers and thunderstorms. And more importantly, the center of circulation is now tucked underneath that area of shower and thunderstorm activity, which is a sign that Ian is trying to organize and probably will continue to do so over the next couple of days. Now, I think this is probably the graphic most of you are tuning in to see. So let's break it down for you. First and foremost, this is where Ian is now, as of right now. We'll move off and start to turn more to the northwest over the next day or so and strengthen. This area of the Northwest Caribbean is very conducive for strengthening. Very, very warm ocean, and the environment, the atmospheric environment, is favorable for Ian to strengthen potentially rapidly as it moves over the Northwest Caribbean Sea and becoming a hurricane as it approaches western tip of Cuba. The yellow here, tropical storm watch for Jamaica. The pink here, hurricane watch. All right, so as it moves off, crosses over or near the western tip of Cuba, then emerges into the eastern Gulf of Mexico and approaches the Florida Peninsula, potentially as a major hurricane. There's a couple other things here to denote. Don't get fixated on these little changes. Let's see here, people say the track moved a little bit this way. It can just as easily move back. And don't get fixated whether you're in or out of the cone. And let's take a look here at Miami-Dade and southern portions of the Florida Peninsula. You may think because you're out of the cone, you're out of the woods. And that is not correct. If Ian were to move along the far eastern side of the cone, it would spread the hazardous conditions over southern portions of the Florida Peninsula. So you here in the southern Florida Peninsula have to maintain preparedness, maintain your guard. The other thing to take from this is confidence is unfortunately increasing in a potentially very impactful hurricane for the western coast of the Florida Peninsula. And this is, we're obviously our concern is up because if you're not aware with this portion of the Florida Peninsula, the storm surge vulnerability here is very, very high. The reason being is the shelf waters, or how quickly the ocean gets deep as you move offshore, really enhances the storm surge for this portion of the state. So we really need you to be prepared and starting to move through your hurricane plans today. In terms of timing of when you need to be ready for this storm. So this graphic, in addition to showing you where the most likely wind impacts will be, so the brighter the color, the higher the probability of impactful winds. It also shows the timing, or the onset of when those winds might be possible. So for here, the Florida Keys, southern Florida Peninsula, the onset of conditions of winds, impactful winds, would most likely be early Tuesday morning, which means your preparedness needs to be completed by sunset Monday. As we shift further up the peninsula, onset of impactful winds most likely Wednesday morning, which means your preparedness would need to be ready, completed by Tuesday at sunset. All right, so up in here, so Tampa, Tuesday at sunset, Miami, Florida Keys, Monday at sunset. And now we alluded to this earlier, this portion of the coastline is very, very vulnerable to storm surge. And if necessary, and emergency managers order it, an evacuation might be ordered at some point later down the line. So one of the things that you need to do as a Florida resident, or whether or not you're in an evacuation zone, and more importantly, which one. Now they're lettered here in the state of Florida, A, B, C, D, so on and so forth. So you can go to this website, floridadisasters.org, know your zone. Upper left-hand corner, you can punch in your address and see if you're in an evacuation zone in which one. If you're watching from outside of Florida and you know someone in Florida, call them up and ask them, what's your letter? make them look up whether or not they're in an evacuation zone. Now I want to end with this. This forecast is deeply personal for all of us here at the Hurricane Center. In addition to potentially impacting us here in South Florida, I've got family in the Tampa area. So I know what you're going through. I know how you're feeling. The key is to remain calm and move through your plans in an orderly fashion. And you need to do so now. Don't wait for a hurricane to develop. We're forecasting a hurricane. Don't base it off the existing satellite imagery or the existing intensity. We're forecasting a potentially impactful hurricane impacting the west coast of the Florida Peninsula next week. So you need to go ahead and start moving through your hurricane plans now versus procrastinating. So that is it from the National Hurricane Center. We'll be right back here tomorrow at the same time with an update on the latest on Ian.